Hi guys, Brain here, and welcome to another commentary video. Today I wanted to talk about something that I have been thinking about for quite a while, because there's been a lot of big changes to DBD lately that have kind of shaken up the game in a big way. Obviously, the big one being the Unbreakable and the built-in Mori system that's coming. Although they said that they're just testing that. That's not coming anytime soon. It's probably coming at the beginning of next year. So realistically, we don't really have to worry about that at all, at least for a long time. However, the next biggest thing that we've had, at least in recent memory, was the big mid-chapter change, where Killers got a lot of buffs base kit, and they did a complete, perk meta shakeup. Now, I will say, before I get into this video, I do enjoy the Killer base kit changes. I feel like one of the most frustrating things for me when I would play Killer would be, the Shift W pre-drop meta, basically just playing as safe as possible. Now, you can still do that, and it is still pretty frustrating, but a lot of that playstyle got undercut by the base kit Brutal, by the base kit Stabiffle, by decreasing the speed boost you get after you hit someone, all of that. All of that goes to help that sort of thing. And without, before that, essentially, especially on killers like Sadako, you could just, go up and pre-drop and Shift W, and essentially, it had, no drawbacks whatsoever. So, I'm glad that they did that. I'm still pretty happy with that. And as a matter of fact, that's kind of, the reason you really don't see a whole lot of, whiny Killer videos on this channel that much anymore, because for the most part that mid-chapter change was really nice and kind of addressed a lot of issues I had with the role. So yeah, I don't really feel like complaining as much anymore, which is weird. Yeah, it's a positive, but I do want to talk about how I feel like the mid-chapter did fail in one very, very crucial area, and that is the shaking up the perk meta. Now, you may be asking, oh my god, clearly, people aren't out here running Ruin Tinker Undying or Ruin Pop or anything like that anymore. That's not happening anymore. But I think that if you're looking at it from the perspective that, it's a meta shakeup and the meta changes, not just the perks being used, but the meta, the strategies that are being used, everything's basically the same. And let me explain what I mean by that. So, I've been playing a lot of both sides lately, and I've been keeping track of the sort of builds that I see when I'm playing both Survivor and Killer, and I'm still seeing the Gen Rush versus Gen Slowdown meta. I'm still seeing Hyper Focus Stakeout go up against Overcharge, Call of Brine, Eruption. I'm still seeing the same stuff that I saw before the mid-chapter. See, before the mid-chapter, it would be Toolbox Proof, everybody would be hopping on gens together, versus, say, Ruin Tinker Undying. And that same level of frustration that I had pre the mid-chapter change with those perks is kind of just carried over to this new meta, and I'm essentially annoyed in similar ways and at similar things than I was before the mid-chapter. Because what I really, really wanted, just personally, and what a lot of people wanted to see come out of the big meta shakeup, was that not just the perks would swap, not that we would just palette swap our perks and what kind of perks are being used, but that we actually saw a change in the meta, that we saw that the strategies that Killers and Survivors use would actually change. The way people actually literally played the video game would get shaken up, and we would have different styles of gameplay. Now, I'd say more on the Survivor side, a lot more in important stuff got gutted, like DS. So you do see a little bit more perk variety on the Survivor side, but it's not by much. It's just little stuff like Hope being better and stuff like that. It's not really you don't really see a lot of huge perk variety in Survivor builds either. It's just there's slightly more. But Killer is basically still run 3 slowdown and then Stabiffle, run 3 slowdown and then Brutal. It's the same stuff. It's just Ruin Tinker Undying and then an info perk, Ruin Tinker Undying and then Shadowmourne if you're Blight. It's essentially the same thing as it was before. And I think that's I don't know, that's really disappointing to me, because I've always hated that. And if you've watched this channel long enough, you've always known that. You've known that's how I felt. I feel like the Gen Rush versus Gen Slowdown meta is just always been incredibly boring and never interesting. And I was really hoping with the meta shakeup that they would actually shake up the meta, but it's really just kind of the meta is essentially the same. Really, it's just kind of swapped out which perks you're using in the meta. So DBD is largely the same, if not more annoying, I would argue, because a lot of the new meta perks are a lot easier to achieve. A lot of these new perks are a lot easier to get value out of than the older perks were. So yeah, in some ways it's even worse than before, in terms of, at least in terms of the meta perk shakeup. And I think, and just in my personal opinion, I think that's I think that's where the mid-chapter kind of failed. That's the one thing about it where I'm I didn't like the way that went. I wish it had gone a little bit better. I wish they'd been a little bit harder on the whole Gen Rush versus Gen Slowdown meta and really actually change the kind of strategies that both survivors and killers bring into the match, because largely it is just the same, and I was really hoping for more variety there. So yeah. What do you guys think? Did you think the mid-chapter all these months later, do you think it was a fail or a flop? Did you think it was actually cool and it worked out a lot? Let me know down in the comments below. And other than that, it's going to be it for today's video, friends. Thank you so much for watching. And if I don't see you tomorrow, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.